The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to the chief priests and the elders of the people, "Listen to another parable. There was a landowner who planted a vineyard, put a fence around it, dug a winepress in it, and built a watchtower. Then he leased it to tenants and went to another country. When the harvest time had come, he sent his slaves to the tenants to collect his produce. But the tenants seized his slaves and beat one, killed another, and stoned another. Again he sent other slaves, more than the first, and they treated them in the same way. Finally, he sent his son to them, saying, 'They will respect my son.' But when the tenants saw the son, they said to themselves, 'This is the heir. Come, let us kill him and get his inheritance.' So they seized him, threw him out of the vineyard, and killed him. Now when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants?" They said to him, "He will put those wretches to a miserable death, and lease the vineyard to other tenants, who will give him the produce at the harvest time." Jesus said to them, "Have you never read in the Scriptures, 'The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone'? This was the Lord's doing, and it is amazing in our eyes. Therefore I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people that produces the fruits of the kingdom." The Gospel of the Lord. There is a statue in Assisi which faces the entrance of the great Basilica of St. Francis. I've never actually been there, but I've seen pictures. And the statue is called Il Ritorno di Francesco, the Return of Francis. If you've ever seen it, it's a profoundly sad-looking statue. A young Francis in full armor with no helmet, riding a horse also covered in armor. But both Francis and the horse have their heads hanging low, looking at the ground, as if dreading what is to come. Why? What are they dreading? As Father Murray told us in his homily last Sunday, Francis had gone to battle and was captured, imprisoned, and eventually released. But he decided to try again, to win fame and renown by becoming a knight. And on the evening before he set out the second time, he had a dream. Francis dreamt that he was in a large palace, and the walls were lined with shields and swords and armor and banners, and they each had a cross on them. And Francis heard a voice say, "These are for you and your soldiers." Not knowing what it meant, he thought this was a good omen, a foreshadowing of a successful career as a knight, maybe even a count, a duke, or a prince someday. Now even more sure of himself, he continued towards Apulia to join the army of Walter of Brienne and begin his career. But on the way, one night, he had a second dream. And in that dream he heard the same voice say to him, "Francis, who can do better for you, the Lord or the servant, the rich man or the poor one?" Francis replied, "The Lord and the rich man, of course." And the voice said, "Then why are you leaving your Lord for a servant, your rich God for a poor mortal?" These words struck him to the heart, and Francis said, "Lord, what do you want me to do?" And the voice said, "Go back to your city, and you will be told what you must do." And it is this return of Francis that the statue attempts to capture. On the one hand, Francis is convinced what God is calling him to do. But on the other hand, it fills him with fear and sadness. He hasn't been gone very long, so returning alone, with his armor completely unscathed, can only mean one thing. He must have deserted, turned back, run away from battle. What would people think? He was about to lose the very thing he set out in search of. fame and renown. Each one of us, too, has a fear of losing things. I shared with the high school students at Resurrection in my homily for them on Wednesday that I think this fear of losing is at the root of all of our sadness. In our attempt to cling to whatever it is we can't let go of, a strange transformation happens. The things we try so hard to protect, things that once brought us joy, suddenly, gradually, become a source of worry and sadness. And we see this difficulty in today's gospel as well. The landowner in the parable asks the tenants for the fruit of his vineyard, but they won't let go. They could have given it back and probably received payment for it, but instead, in their refusal to give, in their refusal to let go, they lost something. It was taken away from them and given to others who would give the landowner his produce at the harvest time. Jesus gave this parable to the chief priests and elders of the people of Israel because they too would not let go. St. Francis of Assisi experienced this struggle on his return as well. And do we not each also experience this? That sometimes it's really hard for us to give God's gifts back to Him, to let things go when God asks us to. Even the very thought of having to do so can fill us with fear and sadness. And yet, it's Thanksgiving weekend. The late Father John Hardon, the Jesuit and author of the Catholic Catechism, which was the precursor to our current Catechism of the Catholic Church, famously said, there are 3 steps to showing our gratitude to God. Thanks thinking, thanks saying, and thanksgiving. And without all 3, we are not being grateful with all of who we are. Just like how you can't love someone by merely thinking loving thoughts about them. You have to actually express your love to them. You have to actually do loving things for them. And so to really give thanks to God for anything, we have to begin with the thinking, with realizing, with recognizing what we have received from God. And then we have to say it. We have to actually express our gratitude externally. Sometimes we say things to ourselves like, well, God knows everything. He doesn't need to hear me say it. Oh yeah? Try that with your significant other and let me know how that goes. It's true God knows everything and doesn't need us to thank Him. But we do. Because that is part of being grateful. Gratitude is not merely a thought or a feeling. It is a way of being. You are either grateful or you're not. Like love, gratitude is not proven by mere thoughts and feelings, but by words and actions. And words do have meaning. They commit us to something when we say them. You can always change your mind, but you can never truly take back words once said. And although words are permanent, talk is still cheap, and actions do speak louder than words. And this is why Thanksgiving involves giving. And this may be the hardest part. Yes, it takes time and brain power to recognize what we have received. And it takes a certain amount of commitment to put things into words. But to be willing to give something back, to let things go, that is a whole other level of gratitude. It is the purest recognition that something is a gift, and it always was, and always will be. On the good days when we can do this, it's like a foretaste of heaven, where all will be gift. On the not so good days, the words that can come out of our mouths shouldn't be repeated in a homily. Now, in this weekend's bulletin, you will find, if you haven't already seen it, the official announcement that Father Paul Voisin, a fellow resurrectionist like Father Murray and myself, has been appointed by Bishop Crosby as the next pastor of St. Francis Parish, effective January 1st, 2024. And on that same day, you will also find that I have been assigned to residence at St. Mary's Parish to continue vocation ministry from there. I've known since the middle of the summer that I would likely be moved, but not to where exactly. And to be honest, knowing even that has been a real struggle. I haven't lived in one place for more than 5 years, ever since high school. This will be my first move also as a priest. They say you will always remember your first parish. And there are many things I'll remember about St. Francis, but this is not my goodbye homily. I'm not leaving until December 31st, so you are stuck with me until then. But I do want to take this opportunity to thank you for one thing. Some of you have known me for over 5 years now, when I first arrived as a young, beardless seminarian in May of 2018. You've watched me, and as Father Tim said you would, you have also shaped me into the priest I am today. And so I thank you. And there are many ways that has happened, but the one way I am most grateful for, which I will always remember, and I have never had reason to doubt, is that I am loved here. Not because of the things I say or do, although I thank you for how you often have told me that you appreciate these things, but simply because you love me. St. John Vianney, the patron saint of parish priests, once said, "The priesthood is the love of the heart of Jesus." The priesthood is the love of the heart of Jesus. But love takes two. And so I thank you for helping to call forth that love of the heart of Jesus in this priest. And as we saw, the purest form of gratitude is not to have to hold on, but to be willing to let go and allow something to always be the gift that it is. And so I'll leave you with one quote that I saw on a friend's Facebook page, which I also shared in my homily at the end of my homily at Resurrection. And it's this: "We are in the season of fall, where the trees are about to show us how lovely it is to let things go." Letting go is not always easy, but it is the purest form of gratitude, of thanksgiving, that is to say, of love.